In the last video, we talked about the models that wilderness schools and wilderness instructors use to reach people and to give them a powerful nature experience. And I talked a little bit about in that video about the blind spots that occur when we get focused on like one model of reaching people. You know, one model for a school, one model for our work. And I kind of outlined three different models: the instructor or expert or founder model. That's like teaching intensive workshops. We talked about the kind of a long-term community or over time, you know, like a semester program or a year-long program like homeschooling. And then we talked about gatherings, you know, where there's like a real palette of things. And then I talked about how there's like 3 or 4 or maybe an endless number of additional models that we have yet to really explore. And so I wanted to clarify a couple things for this video because in the last video, one of the things I talked about was about sustainability and about how all of these models that we're using have to, in a way, eventually provide an income for the instructors, for the school, for the apprentices, for the program, in order to keep going in the long run. And so I wanted to just talk about that and say, how can we shift our models? How can we add to that? Because I got a lot of people actually who were writing to me and or calling me or emailing me, you know, messaging me on Facebook, talking about this video and saying like, here's what I think, or here's what you might address, or what are. So a lot of people were saying like, well, what are the blind spots? What are those other models? And so I'm going to start right off the bat and say that I'm not exactly 100% sure what some of those models are. I know some of them, but I'm not 100% sure about all of them because we haven't really created them yet. But it's safe to say that I know that they're there. It's just a matter of us discovering and creating an idea around it and then implementing and executing that idea in a way that delivers value to our clients. The other thing that I'll mention, I'll get more into that in a second. The other thing I'll mention is that a couple people wrote to me who said things like, well, in my opinion or in my experience, the way to address these issues and to be sustainable is to basically cut your expenses down to, as small as you possibly can. Don't go on vacations, make your gathering trip where you're teaching your vacation, pay for everything in cash, carry no debt, and to really, scale back your expectations for your needs and squirrel away money for a rainy day. And that's a model. And I want to just say right now, for clarification, everyone, whatever model you're currently using, if it's working for you, I'm 100% behind it. I think it's great. So I'm not necessarily refuting that any model that people are currently using is a bad model. The reason that I'm clarifying that is because I don't think I really couched my question of sustainability in a large enough capacity for people to really understand. So I want to be really clear here. The reason I'm talking about sustainability and the reason I'm even putting this out is because the knowledge that we have as instructors, as educators, is we have a lot of experience. There's a lot of stuff that's locked up in here inside of you. If you're out there working with kids, you have knowledge, you have experience, you have skills, and there's a lot of that locked up in you. And if you have to spend half of your day, working at Starbucks or working, banging nails, or if you're having to work doing, some other job besides that nature skill, or nature education experience, if you have to do that, then in a lot of ways it's kind of like taking somebody who's a brilliant neuroscientist or a brilliant surgeon or a brilliant solar energy engineer or something, and then meanwhile they go, well, my first love is really I'd love to solve the energy crisis with my new technology that I'm working on that would just change everybody's lives and be so awesome, but I gotta pay the bills, so I guess I'll just go work at Starbucks, or I'll work at the corner gas station and I'll pump gas and I'll sell people cigarettes and beer and, whatever, right? You get what I'm saying. It's like a waste. It's a waste of resources from a cultural point of view, from a society's point of view, to have somebody with that talent wasting away at these jobs, unless they want to do that, unless they like doing that. But if that person said, you know what, I would work on this full time, I'm close to a breakthrough, I'm like doing this incredible work, why would you pull them out and then say, hey, you could always clean houses in addition, or you could always paint interior painting or something? So you can follow what my logic is, right? Because my goal is really to say, we're not going to really get enough instructors in the world unless we have a stronger financial model so that people can actually be attracted to work in that field. And to say, oh, number one, I love it. And number two, I can actually get paid enough to be able to give my kids, dental work. I actually love it enough that I could actually put their shoes on them so that they could play on the basketball team rather than wearing their moccasins, right? Like, you see where I'm going with this. Like, it's nice. It would be nice if you could like do this brilliant work and change people's lives, and then actually be able to afford a house or to be able to go to a training program or whatever. So I don't think most of you will refute that, because I think I want you to understand that that's the model that's really important to me. And then the other piece of it, the reason why I'm doing that model is because if we can do that and we can attract brilliant people to go into something that can at least pay their bills and at least take care of them at a base level, then we have a model we can actually then put out. Like right now, I really, really, really want to work in instructor training. I want to teach people how to be instructors and say, man, it's never been needed. It's true. It's never been needed more in our culture right now, this nature connection piece that we have. It's never been more necessary than any time in human history, really. However, it's sort of like the environmental education model, right? Back in the 70s, they said, hey, all the kids should actually all be trained in how to, and learn about environmental education. And so, Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring, and Steve Van Mater wrote some great books, and Joseph Cornell, and all these folks, they were all brilliant people. And they got this legislation passed, and it's in almost pretty much every state, that kids in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade go to a nature place for 5 days or 3 days, and they get like an environmental education piece. And that's part of our schooling now. But here's the thing that bothers me about that, is that in the 70s, they said, yeah, that's really important. And so they put these nature programs together. But here's why I think they didn't really take it seriously. This is why environmental education is not really taken that seriously. Because they didn't actually say this is valuable and we're going to pay for it like it's valuable, because it is. Instead, they created these centers, and they kind of got away with what they could get away with. They said, all right, we're going to work with a state, or we're going to work on a municipal level. We're going to set aside a building or a couple of acres of park or 30 acres of park or something. And then they hired people to come in, and they hired them at such ridiculously low rates to run this really important, vital program, and run these people through the program so often that they get burned out, number one. And number two, they pay them so low that they can't really even afford to keep doing it, even if they love it, even if they love the rat race of that. And I've worked in environmental ed, and I'm going to tell you, it's not sustainable. You can only sing boom chicka boom and do the unnature trail and take kids and do game after game. You can only do that so long when it's just like cycling through 300 kids every week. It's not sustainable. You can't. It's an exceptional person that can do that for more than like 3 or 4 years, and still be fresh and still be able to really connect with kids and not be completely loopy. So what they did was they created a model that didn't pay people enough to make a living wage, and is so repetitive that it's like mind-numbing. And that's the model they went. And then somebody somewhere on the state level, on the education department, said, oh, that's great. That's perfect. That's what we need. That's the answer. And then put that all in place and then walked away. And you can go and get a degree in environmental education, and you can spend whatever, $80,000 or $120,000. Well, you can spend a lot of money to get a degree, a 4-year degree in environmental education. And when you get out, you don't have a living wage job waiting for you. And the only way you're going to get paid really well is to go into a managerial or administrative position. That's not sustainable. So, as you can probably tell, I have a lot of irritation at the fact that for 40 years, we've been using this really stupid model, in my opinion, that is one of the reasons why most people don't really respect, environmental educators. Like I remember when I worked in it, I would go there with these kids and we would change those kids' lives in 3 days. We would change their life. The kids would just be like completely different. And the teacher would come up to me and go, "Oh, Ricardo, thank you so much. You changed this group's life. Oh my God, you made such a difference. You made such a difference." You know what the real difference was? I'm saying, yes, I love doing that work. So I love teaching and changing those kids' lives. But here's the difference. That teacher has a pension. She's going to put her money away. And when she retires at 55, she's going to be able to be set for life, right? For the rest of her life. She's got health insurance. She's got paid vacation. She doesn't have to like clean up the activity room because there's janitors. She doesn't have to do and post flyers for her workshops. She doesn't have to do all the administration for the school. She doesn't have to fundraise for the school. She just shows up, she does her job, and she leaves. So she is admiring me for what we're doing, this environmental education, but at the same time, her level of respect and standing, and she also has a salary of anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 a year to start, right? Any one of us educators as a wilderness leader or professional wilderness instructor would love to have those benefits and that salary, right? Am I right? And that's all I'm trying to say is that there's such a disparity in those two things. And if Steve Van Mater and whoever else those folks are that started these things, if they had said, "Hey, these people have to be paid like teachers, that's the only way to make it work," I would totally have respected that. And I would have said, "Oh, good, that's a model that would work. You could go get a professional degree, work as a professional in this field. Awesome." But when you're paid like $12,000 or $9,000 or $8,000 a year to do that same work, and you do it, no one takes you seriously. If you go, "Yeah, I think we need to change our model," or whatever, they don't take you seriously because they don't take you seriously as a professional because you're not getting paid like a professional. So therefore, if we're going to be considered valuable and professional, we have to change the model in the way in which we work. And so therefore, some of those like blind spot boxes that I put on that last video where I kind of said, here, what are the other models? Many of them, some of them are just stopgap things. They're things of ways of bringing in like a little extra money, like maybe bringing in $500 a month or $700 or $1,200 extra a month to kind of help you pay your bills while you're an instructor. And I can, I'm developing those because I think that those are really helpful. But in the long run, what we have to do is fundamentally help our culture understand the value of what we do and why it's so important. And that is the thing that I don't really hear anybody actually doing. I'm not, this isn't meant as a criticism of like anybody, I'm not like going, "Oh yeah, Tom Brown, you didn't do this," or "John Young, you didn't do this," or Steve, Richard Lou. Everybody is doing their part and doing the best thing that they can. But what I'm trying to say is that unless we actually actively advocate for why the value of what we do and put that into context and then say, and help us get paid as professionals to do that, almost all of our efforts are going to be really marginalized, like really marginalized in a major, major way. It's just not, they're not really going to amount to the type of outcome that we believe. And that's not me being negative or being like I'm trying to poo-poo anything. For all of you that are working in the trenches and making a difference for those kids' lives, that's awesome. I'm not marginalizing you. I'm only saying that if we're going to move and we're trying to reach 30 or 50 million kids, we have to fundamentally change the way we're being seen and the way we're being considered and the way we work. And so that is what I'm really interested in doing in the long run. And in the short run, I'm also interested in saying, hey, if you need money now, here's some ways to help you with that. So one of the things that I'm trying to talk about with this is to say that in order to make more money, in order to kind of fill in those blind spots in there, there's a couple different models that we have. And I don't have my board here, I would write them down. But I'll just cover it as quick as I can. So one model that I have is a model where you kind of have to look at and you say, what, I haven't like made a catchy title for this or anything, but I look at it as the supplemental income of something that people value. Like for example, with Hawk Circle, we teach tracking and adventure and survival and all that. And people go, wow, that's really great. We love that. Here, take my kid and go to camp or whatever. But we also have, and there's a value associated with the kid going to camp that has a history of like 100 years or more. So people will go, oh yeah, let's send the kid and have them do this thing. However, when it comes to like doing a tracking workshop, there's really no way, it's hard for someone to really value what is the value of tracking? And is it good? I mean, is it $5,000? Is it $100? Is it $15? Is it, is a day of tracking worth $15 or is it worth $200? And it really just depends, right? It depends. It depends on how you feel. If you feel that it's worth $500 to go for a weekend tracking with, say, some really high-ranking person, like say Mark Elbrock comes out and he's like written the book, so you go, I value his knowledge, so I will pay that money. Then that is how you assess it. If you're like some guy on the street that no one knows, and you're like, I've been tracking for 20 years, but no one knows your name, and you don't have anybody following, then you might have trouble getting $25 per person for a day-long workshop or a weekend workshop. So it all is about perceived value in this. It's not a cultural understanding of that value. So what happens is that you, in order to sustain your work in doing that good work and maybe making money not be the option, be an option or a problem, a barrier. One way that I do it is where you have a supplemental income where you then say, all right, I'm going to learn a skill that does have value. So, for example, you could learn how to lay tile. Like my brother does construction, and so one of the ways, he's a teacher actually, and so one of the ways that he makes more money is that once a month he'll work on somebody's bathroom. He'll go in and like redo their bathroom, and so he'll charge whatever $3,000-$4,000 to redo their bathroom, put new tile in, rip out the old tub, put the new one in. Like he's learned that skill. So once a month he'll work, do a project like that. He'll go work after school a few times. He'll spend a weekend doing all the finishing touches, then regrout everything, and then set someone's, bathroom up or whatever. And he'll make anywhere from $2,000 to say $6,000, depending on the job. So because he's then invested in the training, he's invested in the tools, he's invested in that, and there's a monetary value to doing that because someone will then pay him, to do that work, knowing that it's going to add to the value of their home. It's going to add to the enjoyment of their home while they have it. And when they go to sell their home or their apartment, they will be able to get back their investment. For Hawk Circle, we've used timber framing. So we do all this wilderness skills stuff, but we also do timber framing. Now, people may have a hard time putting a value on tracking, but they definitely can say, wow, if you build me a timber frame house, that has value. Like if we build a house for someone, and we've built houses for people, and those houses went from being, it might have only cost us, say, $50,000 to build that timber frame for someone, but the home that we built is probably worth $300,000 when it's completed, because of the value that we invested in the work and the quality. And so somebody can recognize that and go, wow, that was a good investment. I invested in that. Now I have this value. I can borrow against it. I can, I have this beautiful home that'll keep me, warm and safe in the biggest storms and all that sort of stuff. So there's a value associated in that direction. So if you want to look for something that would be your parallel work. So in other words, you might have something that feeds you and puts food on the table that you do 3 days a week or 4 days a week, that you can set your own hours. So I know people that I've done lots of different jobs. I've done window cleaning, window washing. I've done interior painting. I've been a cook at a restaurant. I've done construction, lots of different kinds of construction. I've done timber framing. Those kinds of things are things that you can do, that you can learn. And there's no real, you could really look around and find people that get paid well to do something part-time or full-time, that if you're good at it, you can make a decent living at. And if you're careful and you can say no to certain jobs, you can actually work as much or as little as you want and then feed your other love, which is like sharing and teaching and connecting people to nature. So that's one model for how that might work. And so I always tell my apprentices, learn something that will pay the bills no matter what, something you can fall back on that people need, that you can do and you can do well. And if you learn to do that, you'll be okay. You'll be able to take care of your business. The second thing that I do is I say, so that's a good model right there. The other one is to say, well, marry somebody or get into a relationship with someone who will support you for that. So like, I know a lot of people that run wilderness programs whose wife or husband is either a nurse or a doctor or a chiropractor or someone who makes enough money doing a job that during their day job that it can support you, so that they don't need two incomes or two full incomes. So then if your income, if your job is actually, if you're, what do I want to say? I don't want to say job, but if your household and the work you do doesn't really pay as much, say you only get 6 people for a workshop instead of 15 or 20, that's okay, because you're not going to be out on the street. The problem with that model is that eventually the person that makes the more of the money is a little bit like jealous, because you're out there playing in the woods and going, oh, I had such a wonderful time. It was so great. I sat in a tree and then I took a little walk and then I picked a couple of milkweed and I made a piece of string. Isn't that great? And the other person's like, hey, I just sewed a person up who was dying. Like, I want to go on vacation. Can you help make some more money? Like it can create a real rift. So it's not a long-term solution, but at least in the short run, it can work to keep yourself going, especially if you have that, if it works for your relationship. Another model that I would say, and this is the model that I'm kind of like currently coaching people on, for Select. I have like a very, very small coaching program. So if somebody is interested in that, please email me and let me know. You might be able to get in for the next round. But the idea here is that you take what you know and you develop what I call the signature program, something that's like out of all the stuff you know. So maybe you know wild edibles, and you know how to make fish hooks, and you know how to do hunting skills, and you know how to do tracking, and you know how to build shelter, and you know how to make fire, and you have all this skill. What you do is you develop what I call the signature program, and you develop that with a specific audience in mind that you are then able to really reach and serve. And you do that in a way that really helps you to become established as a known authority in that area for your clients, and then do an incredible job serving them. And so that is one of the ways, and that's tricky to do, because you have to actually you have to know what they want, you have to also know how to connect with them. And so then what happens is that if you're successful with that core program, you're then able to underwrite some of your programs that don't make a lot of money. So in other words, instead of trying to run 75 workshops a year or 10 workshops a year and make kind of a little money here and there, you're actually maybe able to work, do your signature program 10 times and make enough money that you can then do a free meetups or free tracking clubs or whatever, and you don't have to get paid as much for those. So therefore you can just make them like $10 or whatever, or donation, and you can then offer that. And so that's another way to do it, is to really go for a core signature program. In Hawk Circle, our signature program has always been our summer camps, to try to offer and deliver a really good experience. And so that's been one of the pieces that we've tried to do. And in the future, like this for 2015, I'm going to be doing some instructor training programs to teach people how to do both working with kids and also working with adults in wilderness connection. And so that will be my adult signature program. So that those are the ways that you can really move ahead. There's other models as well, which are maybe working with businesses, maybe working with other professionals. I mean, it's really about when you start looking at populations and saying, okay, what can we do to make a difference and also get paid well? There's a lot of different, when you look at our culture today, there's a lot of people that are disconnected, they're bored, they're looking for something to connect to or whatever, but they don't really know if they're looking for you, for what you're doing. So you have to kind of get creative as far as what you have in your natural area that you can do to serve people who are looking for you. So for example, for us for a long time, we did programs where we worked for businesses offering retreats for their board meetings, for their when they did trainings for staff training. We would come in and do just a very, very, simple program. Sometimes it would literally be like 2 hours, and we would do some simple thing like fire making, and then the group would then go off and do their own thing with their own leaders, and we would provide lunch, and we would charge $1,200. We charge $1,800. Sometimes we charge $2,500. Like, we would charge a lot of money for that one day program, and depending on what the business was, they would be like, oh yeah, that's fine, we'll pay that, because they valued the experience and having an expert, and they were just used to paying that in the other venues that they work with. So that's another way to go. And all of these things are things that you may or may not be able to do. It does take a certain kind of person to be able to pull that off. You can't really put like two 18-year-olds and throw them into that program and say, here, teach a bunch of 50-year-old business professionals and expect them to come back the following year. So you have to have people that are experienced and can speak their language a little bit and really connect with them. So if that's not you in your program or in your school or as an instructor, then you wouldn't shoot for that type of experience. You wouldn't try to pinpoint that. So everything hinges on you looking at your environment and then looking at the models you have that you're currently using, and then looking at the way people may need support, and then figuring out how do you meet that. So I hope I'm making myself clear. It's really, really, for me, everything about getting this field established and then directly providing this field with the funding it needs to really take off and reach 30 to 50 million people in the next 5 to 10 years. That's everything I'm doing is in that direction, and I totally respect. So I know I sound like a broken record. The reason I'm sounding like a broken record about this is that I respect everybody and what they're doing right now. Is that none of this is about refuting or poo-pooing or disrespecting or saying anybody out there doing whatever they're doing is wrong. And the real reason I want to say that is that I have so many friends that have worked their whole lives and have figured out ways to do what they're doing and have struggled and just, they're so dedicated. And I just, honestly, if any of this, you guys are watching this, I just want you to know, like, I totally respect everything you're doing. And so I just don't want anybody to feel bad or to think that I think that you're not doing it right, because nothing could be further from the truth. I'm only looking at it from the goal and saying, if this is the goal where we want to go, if this is the mountain we want to climb, we are not going to get there. We don't, if you want to climb Everest, you need certain kinds of gear. You need frickin' the right shoes, boots, parkas. You need a bunch of Sherpas to bring all your gear to base camp, I guess, unless you want to do it all by yourself. You need oxygen. You need goggles. You need gloves. You need the equipment. You need support. It's going to cost you, I think that just to get a permit to climb Everest is like $100,000. I mean, I think, or I don't even know, maybe that's not right. I think they said at least it's got to be like $100,000 to $150,000 to climb Everest as an investment for you to even go there. You can't even get foot on the mountain and climb that thing unless you have, paid a lot of money and invested a lot of money and time to get there and do that. And so that's what I'm saying is, if we want to go there, we need funding, we need support, we need the right gear, we need all that to get there. And that's why, to me, I'm trying to at least, these videos are a way to kind of help all of you that are out there working in the trenches to say, this is where I'm coming from. I'm not coming from, because I know what's going to happen is people are going to see some of the different things I'm going to do as the next year or 2 years go by. And you're going to say, what the heck is he doing? And why is he doing that? And what's going on? And I'm kind of in a way preemptively trying to help you understand this is where I'm going and why I'm doing it this way. And it's just with that goal in mind. And I honestly, I don't really care. Ultimately, you can disagree with me, and I'm okay if you disagree with me. But I'm really saying, like, I believe with every fiber of my being, our culture needs to be connected to nature no matter what. And I don't care what that looks like. I don't care if that means that it's only a half-hour nature experience. I don't care how we get there exactly. I mean, obviously, I don't want it to get there. I don't want to get to the top of the mountain with a giant Shell Oil on the sign on the back of my shirt or something. But I'm also not. I'm a realist. I'm not going to kind of pretend that it doesn't matter how we get there, because it does matter how we get there. But to a certain degree, we have to be really flexible and not. We have to at least get people connected. And as people are getting connected, we're going to come up with more and more creative solutions on how we can get our culture there all the way. If you follow what I'm trying to say, like, I'm really, I'm not trying to go, well, the only way to get there is if we're all anarchists and we're all vegan and we all live in like little co-housing hobbit villages and we all grow our hair long and we get dreadlocks and everyone has these certain tattoos and we all only eat organic, pure food that we raise ourselves, and we do it. And that's the only way. So therefore, everything else to get up to here doesn't matter because we have to have everything. If you want to do that, that's fine. That's awesome. That's an awesome example of how you can make that happen. However, it's going to be real difficult because there's so many barriers in that. There's so many barriers to the average person looking at how to get connected to nature, that if they think that in order to get connected to nature, they have to be vegan, a hippie, a radical, an anarchist, and that means they can't go to Chipotle again ever, and it means that they can't ever, their kids aren't going to get medical care and blah, 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 then all of those barriers basically go cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. It just closes doors. It's like clang, clang. Those doors are going shut, and they go, all right, well, you guys are crazy, and therefore we're not interested. So I'm really, what I'm saying is that in order to get some of these people to connect with us, we have to remove a lot of these barriers and connect with them as where they're at, not where we want them to be or where we want to be. But we have to connect with where they're at and then say, hey, we have something of value. Do you want to learn this? Is this valuable to you? And they go, wow, that's really cool. It's amazing. Wow, thank you. Yes, that is valuable. And then we can sort of slowly take them step by step. Because you didn't wake up one morning and just go, I think I'll just live in buckskins forever and I'm going to now be whoever you didn't just arrive there to, because you read one thing from someone. It was a journey, it was a process. You were exposed to things. And so all I'm saying is to get 50 million people to at least consider alternative ways of living, we have to start where they're at and kind of begin to slowly move them in that way. And not everybody wants to do that. A lot of people probably don't want to do that. When I first started teaching and we said, they approached us and said, hey, would you want to go do a school program, after school programs in the schools? I had a lot of my instructors go, oh, I don't want to do that. I would never want to go into that school where fluorescent lights and cinder block buildings and live and that culture. Oh, I hate that so much. Oh, I just can't say. I would never want to go back. And I would be like, okay, good. I know you're not the instructor for me. You can't handle that experience. It brings up too much stuff for you. It was really painful. And I totally get that. However, what I'm trying to say is I want to train instructors who don't mind going in there and going, hey, this is where the kids are at. I'm going to go where they're at, and I'm going to then give them an opportunity to have a glimpse of a different world, even if it means I have to bring all my stuff into the classroom, and I'm going to work with them and give them something. Throwing them a bone, throwing them a crust of bread, throwing them something, and saying, hey, let's connect, let's share what's going on, let's find out. And so what has happened is that because of doing that, we, Hawk Circle is considered like one of the best after school activities that all these kids around in our area experience, and they love it. And I mean, the Tom Brown student in me screams because I'm like, oh my gosh, going into the school and doing this thing, it's like so far from like, the ultimate survival thing that, is super intense. Like I totally understand that. But to a kid in a class where this is the only thing that's really real, maybe jumping out at them that they really can grab onto, it's all like a life preserver to them. And so even though it might seem watered down and dumbed down or whatever, it's still really important to them. And so that's why we kind of need people who don't mind being in that world and really trying and not disdaining those people, like not being offended by those people by the fact that they're at where they're at, and to just go, hey, would you want to check this out? Hey, check it out. Let's see what's happening. So I hope that this video can help you in some way understand that, and I hope that I've kind of fleshed out a few of those boxes of different models just to throw those out. If you didn't quite get that or you didn't quite understand that, like, please send me an email, ask me, I'll talk to you more about it. And I'll try to see if I can define more things that are more clear. Maybe I can do a shorter video on just each one of these things. But anyway, if you made it through all the way, congratulations, you're awesome, and I really appreciate it. So let me know what you think.